Greetings, everyone. This is Pia Lorenzo, your host of the Leaders of Art podcast. Today, I have another great guest for you. My new good friend, Pia Antico from Australia. And we're part of the same container for a multi-authored book with my good friend and our good friend, Mary Gooden. She's our publisher. She's a friend. She's one of the alumni of my 3-week launch a podcast challenge as well. So this is where we connected. I just had a wonderful chat with her. And it was funny because she thought it was recorded, and I asked her a question about her, and she went like for a 20-minute answer because it was so, so fascinating. I didn't, want to disturb her. I just let her go with the flow. And then after that, she thought that this was recorded, but no. So hold that. We're going to talk about it as well. So yes, she does have a very,
let's hope I remember it all.
Yeah, she does have a very interesting path. Just to highlight from what I just learned, she lived in Lahore, Pakistan, of all places, because she was doing some humanitarian work. And while there, she got married there with a local. And and another noteworthy thing about her is that she mentioned she used to be a Muslim. She converted to Islam about 10 years ago, and now she left it about a year or so as part of her spiritual awakening, if that understand it correctly. Then we're going to talk about that later on. So and now what she's doing, well, in the meantime, she also obviously get trained in psychology, and now she's working with, when I asked her, what is the beautiful impact you're having in the world? She said she's working with women entering the 40s and help them shut the stories in their head so that they can live life to the fullest. So there's a lot we can talk about. And I told her just the experience she had in Pakistan alone can be a book. Her experience as a Muslim woman can be an entire book just by itself. So, but we'll take it one bite at a time. We're not going to go the whole, eat an elephant in one sitting. We're going to go, so to speak, one step at a time. So without any further ado, Pia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Payman. It's really a pleasure to be here. And
You're
well,
welcome.
you can lead me wherever you want on this meandering tour of life, the universe, and everything. Happy to talk about whatever. It's
Yes,
kind of
and as I just
already
told
out
you,
there in the public sphere.
yeah, as I just told you just before going live, I'd like to have a look under the hood, so to speak, see what's in your heart, and to have an heart-to-heart conversation to get to know you as a person. We're going to talk about all that I just mentioned later on, but first, for people that don't know you, who's Pia as a person and as a human being?
Oh, well, this has been an interesting one. I would have normally, in times gone by, answered that with a whole lot of labels of self. But those stories of self aren't really all that solid and true anymore. I guess who am I to start with is I'm an energetic wisdom being in a physical body having a human experience.
Beautiful.
And as I walk through this world, I have my own, as we all do, we all have our own unique lens on the world. We thinking creatures, and we experience the world through our thought in the moment. Our feelings come from our thoughts, and we respond to that. It might look like we're responding to the outside world and the people in it, but we're actually responding to our thoughts in that moment. But unlike my past psychology and counseling practice and understanding, where we'd focus on what we're thinking and why we're thinking it and develop a whole extra layer of thinking about all that, it's not necessary, because thought and feelings rise and fall like the tide. And so we don't have to do anything with them except have awareness that it's just thought. And with that, it allows you to be the chameleon that we actually all are. We are whatever we say we are. So who am I now? I'm single. I'm 50, coming up 21st of April. I am living in Australia, though, wanting to live in Rome one day. And
when I saw your name, I saw Pia Antico. That's very Italian. Do you have any Italian?
Oh, it is. My father's family are Calabrian.
Oh, do you speak Italian?
My oh, that's a story and a half. No, unfortunately, my dad he was born here in Australia, but the rest of his he was born here. Two of his siblings, older siblings, were born here. Everyone else was born in Calabria. He wanted. There was I mean, it's just unfortunately Australian society is built on racism. And so in 1936, when he was born here and then growing up here, the height of racism towards Southern, Italians and Greeks and that. So, yeah, he married an Irish Australian girl, my mum. And though she wanted the Italian lifestyle, he wanted the anglicized lifestyle. So I didn't grow up bilingual, cursing it to the day I die, because I'm constantly trying to learn other languages, and Australia is English speaking only. So it's just, unless you are born into it and you really hear it around you, everything is structured towards English. And so unfortunately, second language learning was never really my forte, and I've tried. But I am trying Italian again on Duolingo. So
Yes.
it's all part of the dream. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to speak it, and I'm going to have my villa in Rome. This is going to happen eventually.
Beautiful. One advice I can give you is, because I learned Italian without taking a single lesson, just by finding something I truly love about Italian culture, which was for me football and the music. So music helped me a
Yes.
lot learning. So what
Yes.
I'm saying is, find a reason that you're deeply passionate to learn a language. And this way you won't even need a teacher or a school. And that applies to pretty much anything in life.
Yes. I love my Italian dramas. At the moment, I'm watching a medical drama on SBS called Doc.
Okay.
Italian drama, brilliant. And yeah, it's wonderful. And it's great I can hear a lot more words, which is brilliant. Yeah.
All right.
The
Awesome.
problem is when someone says something to you and you've got to respond, or you
Yeah.
have a phrase and you say it, and then they start talking back at you, and you're just like, hang on, a bit more than I can
All right. Sounds
handle.
good. All right. Now I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to get to
Okay.
further know you. So rapid fire, short
Rapid
answers.
fire. Yes.
What makes you happy?
Well, I am happy, but joy is our eternal nature. So I myself make me happy. That's pretty much it. It's not the world, it's how I see it that makes me
Beautiful.
happy.
Beautiful. Now, what makes you smile?
Ooh, well, just the thought that I can be happy at any time at my own thing, at my own sense of being is happy. And when I think about that, that makes me smile. So
Beautiful.
there you go.
What makes your soul come alive in a good way?
Well, this kind of thing, talking life, universe, and everything, really.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yes.
On the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
Well, the same thing. It's thinking in the moment. So if I'm sad or angry, it is because I'm having some thinking momentarily that is saying that something isn't the way I expect it to be. And that is the cause of my own unhappiness. And equally, it's the cause of my own happiness. It's not the people and the events in the world that make us happy or sad, but that we think it.
What scares you?
Well, again, thought. It's always thought. It comes back to thought in the moment.
Yes.
That being said, I really don't like spiders.
I was
And
about to say that.
and I don't cope with heights, I must admit. So you're not going to get me scaling Mount Everest or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say is your number one personal superpower?
Well, in the old days, because I would have said intellect, and though I am intelligent, it's no longer, I don't no longer see that as a superpower. It gets in the way of being intuitive. So I would now say my ability to tap into my inner wisdom is
Beautiful.
my superpower. Yeah.
Beautiful. Now, let's talk about traveling. What was the
Mm.
first trip you took?
Ooh, very first trip, I guess, would be as an infant. I got taken to Fiji.
Oh, wow.
I know. I don't remember it at all, but there's photos, so it proves I was there, I guess. But the trip that I did that was mine that I create. I mean, unfortunately, I have unrequited wanderlust. I've never. I wish to travel the world, just haven't had the resources to do so to quite the degree that one would want. But that's another story, and that will change. It will. But
Well,
let's
indeed.
see. Uh, I was in. I cannot believe the time has gone by with this one. But my first trip as a young adult was to Italy.
Ah,
And I was 22 at the time. So we're going back 30 odd years now. Yeah, 22, 22, 25. Oh God, I can't do my math in my head. But hey, if I'm 25, 27 years ago. And then, and I just loved it. I love that trip so much. And it was almost like it was yesterday. So I'm dying to get back again. I've done Spain and I've done Morocco and I have lived in Pakistan.
wow. Now that is the one that really, caught my attention of all places. So tell us about Pakistan. What took you there and all that?
Well, I was finishing my master's degree in community development and was having a midlife career change for a moment, away from psychology, away from away from psychology and independent individual transformation to social structural transformation and change. And I guess for me, it's always been a tension between the two. And so I had an opportunity to go across and do an internship with a development agency over there. And while I was there, a connection that I had made turned into marriage, and
Wow.
was I was there in that marriage for I guess 3 years, three going on 4 years, and I got pregnant twice, and I miscarried twice, and got rather very sick as well, unfortunately. And in the end, the marriage was very difficult, and I couldn't. My health was deteriorating rapidly, so I found myself having to exit and head
Mhm.
back to Australia. So that's what I did.
What made you
And that
choose?
was
So when you were looking at opportunities to go abroad and do humanitarian work, what
yeah.
made you choose Pakistan over any other countries?
You know what? I don't believe that I actively chose it, in the sense of an opportunity arose, so I took it. It
Beautiful.
was one of those, and I think I've lived most of my life
So when you announced that to your
like
family, when you announced that to your family before going there, what was the reaction? I'm sure it must have been, are you out of your mind?
yeah, there was a lot of are you out of your mind? I I went. I initially went there for 7 weeks and stayed with his family, and then came back to Australia, and I finished my studies and wrapped my life up. And so there was a bit of time in between. I mean, yeah, there's time in between before I packed up and moved permanently. Um, yeah, I think for the most part, my family were cautious. I mean, they were cautiously supportive. They were worried though. Yeah, and it's, the thing is, Pakistan was beautiful. It was a beautiful
Oh yes,
country.
absolutely.
I just really, I desperately wanted to make it to Hunza Valley up north. It never happened, unfortunately, but I watched, my ex-husband was in TV and media and filmmaking, and one of his mates was from uni, was from Hunza, and he did the most beautiful documentaries, short documentaries in the region, and I still to this day love one in particular of his short films, and it's, yeah, I just so much wanted to make it up there, and it never happened, unfortunately. But look, Pakistan is beautiful. It's a beautiful country, in its in its architecture, in the colors, in the natural wonders. You know, it is. It's really beautiful. I think some of the infrastructure obviously needs to be improved. Over time, it will be. No, there's a lot to be said about there. I'm allergic to chili though, and so everything has
Oh
chili
yeah.
in it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and trying to say no chili in it to family and restaurants and that, please no chili. They go, okay, that's no red chili, but they'd still put the green stuff in. And I'm like, no.
Yes,
I mean, like,
yes.
no. And they're like trying to spoon feed. Look, have a little taste. You'll do it. No, honestly, it doesn't work like that. So yeah. No, it was a beautiful time. I think, unfortunately for me, marred by the personal relationships that I was having there. But setting that aside, I think that I had a really beautiful experience living in Pakistan.
Beautiful. This is what matters. What was your very first impressions upon arriving in Pakistan?
Oh gosh, I loved it. The very first time I got there was the color.
Mm.
The color. You
The
come
smell,
from,
the
because
sounds.
people don't understand. Like, we're here in, I don't know, here in Australia at least, you see people, we're all dressed in dark jeans or white t-shirts or black I mean, like, and just, it's just not the same. And you get there in the beautiful saris, and dupattas and the and shalwar kameez and that, and the beautiful colors and the beautiful patterns, and just, it's the most stunning thing to just see a sea of people beautifully colored. The other thing that struck me was, I'd be driving on the back of a motorbike, which I absolutely loved, and next to us would be someone in a BMW, and or Ferrari or something, and on
Wow.
the other side there would be someone, a man or woman with a cow or a goat, or and don't forget the rickshaws. I love the
Oh yeah.
rickshaws. You know, and so to see the diversity of, I guess, wealth was quite illuminating, really. Yeah,
Absolutely. Wow.
yeah.
Now, what was your biggest challenge there? Other than the relationship, we're gonna get into that after. But as far as being in Pakistan,
Yeah. I think the biggest challenge, there were, at at that time, I I converted to Islam, from Buddhism. I grew up as in a Christian Catholic family, and
so wait,
went
so
through.
did you convert to Islam while you were in Pakistan or before going to Pakistan?
Oh, before I converted to Islam here in Australia. I converted in September 7, 2011.
Wow, so remember the date. Wow.
Of course, I remember the date. And I converted from, I guess, 15, 16 years as a Tibetan Buddhist. And yes, for me, it was, I was sitting in meditation and had this inclination that I needed the direction of my devotion. It needed a shift. And at that time, I was reading Hafiz and Rumi, and it just kind of, it felt like a good idea at the time. And understanding, I study everything I do in life. So I don't just, I studied my Buddhism as I was practicing, and I studied Islam as I practiced. And so to understand, for me, the core tenets of Islam, especially as practiced from the spirit, I fundamentally still agree and believe are absolutely beautiful. For me, I saw the things that were attributed to Prophet Muhammad. Buddha said, and Jesus said. For me, I see an arc that connects all of the major traditions of spiritual thinking, as it should, because they're all pointing to source. They're all pointing to the same universal energy and the same mechanics, but they're just using a different framework slightly to explain it. But yeah, so I was Muslim before I went to Pakistan, and was already living wearing abaya and hijab, and funnily enough, I was already praying 5 times a day and doing pre-Fajr prayers and fasting and doing all the thing. When I do things, I go all in. So I was already all in. And interestingly, I think one of the things that I found quite shocking and difficult as a convert, moving to a Muslim, and I will use the term nominally Muslim country, is to find, unfortunately, that, but then it's the same in all religions. I think those that are born into it and see it as maybe more of a cultural thing than a spiritual path or that kind of thing, they kind of maybe don't really practice properly. And then culture also merges with the pure ways of doing things. So unfortunately, I found quite a discord between what I understood to be actually a very feminist religion. Our prophet came about to change a society that was patriarchal and misogynistic and harmful to women and children and animals and the environment, with what he said and instructed how for men to behave. And unfortunately, I did not see that being practiced by a large part, the men of the society. So I struggled in that society. I found that I wasn't able to practice Islam in the same way. I wasn't allowed to go to mosque. I wasn't allowed to.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me go.
Even because mosque and places, they have one section for men, one section for women. They wouldn't even allow you to go for the women's section?
Funnily enough, this is what's really interesting. I feel like in Western countries, the Islamic centers are built a bit more mindfully, and certainly have gotten better with that over the years, where they are providing women's spaces, and in fact not putting them in the attic or the cellar, but actually making them. Been in plenty of Islamic centers where the women's section is like a cupboard. But
Wow.
that's another story, and that's here
Yeah.
and there. But there it was very much, unfortunately, a cultural belief
Yes.
that,
Yeah.
and that's it. And so they dress up the cultural belief as an Islamic belief, as an Islamic ruling, and it's not. And so trying to explain that to them got me into a lot of trouble.
Yes. This is also,
I'm very outspoken, and I was constantly rattling cages to go, no, this isn't what Islam says. This is what your culture says.
exactly. Make a difference between culture and religion.
Yeah,
Yes.
but when it's so interspersed and there's a purpose for it, then yeah, it was a fight that I decided wasn't worth fighting anymore for me. And so for me, leaving Islam was not so much, it wasn't because I saw no value in the tradition. I was when I came back to Australia, I was still Muslim for at least another 4 years, but after coming back. But in the end, for me, I just felt that it was one of a number of traditions. So I have a kind of a hybrid path now where I practice Buddhism again. I return to my Buddhist practice. I intersperse that with Wiccan pre-Christianity, the divine feminine practices, and also Sufism is still there informing me as well. So, but I choose to just it's not about looking a certain way or belonging to a certain group anymore.
Wow, what a fascinating journey.
Yeah.
So,
which is fine by me.
how was it challenging to adapt from a Western diet to a Muslim one, especially giving up pork and alcohol, for example?
Oh, that wasn't hard. No, I mean, I wasn't a big pork eater anyway. God,
Okay.
no. I mean, I was vegetarian.
Okay.
Maybe what they'd say pescatarian, I guess. I would eat fish every so often, but largely I was vegetarian. I wasn't drinking alcohol anyway. I had sustained a massive head injury in 2000. I was 28 at the time. I was run over at 100 kilometers an hour. I sustained a massive head injury. Because of that, I acquired epilepsy. And so I hadn't been drinking alcohol for decades because of that. So that just wasn't an issue for me at all. The diet that was an issue was the maybe never understood breaking fast in Ramadan in the heat of Pakistan with fried food. Never got it.
Yes.
Never got it.
Yes.
And the chili, that everything had chili in it. And I'm allergic to chili. So trying to explain green chili is still chili.
Yes, you have to be clear. Yes.
So somehow that just it's too difficult for them to get. But there were what you call foreign supermarkets.
Really? Wow.
Like in Gulberg and Defence. So I was in Lahore. So I was, oh God, where was I? In Iqbal Town and somewhere else. I can't remember the other suburb we lived in. But and then I was working in Gulberg. So which are kind of like fancy areas. And there was a Korean restaurant that we used to go to. I really loved it. And there were a couple of Italian restaurants, except I've got to tell you, the coffees. I had to teach a few of them how to make a decent cup of coffee. But then it is the land of chai, so I suppose what can I say?
Milk chai, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Very nice.
Wow. Fascinating. This would be honestly, you have a few books in you. Now, few questions came to mind, but the one question I want to ask you is,
Yeah.
so you were born in a Catholic family, then you transitioned into Buddhism and then into Islam. What would you
Yes.
say has been, have you noticed any similarities between all three of them?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So yeah, so my foray, so yeah, born into a Catholic family, went to an all-girls Catholic convent school. I guess I was maybe 12 or 13 when I started to study, history and the impact of the Christian church and colonialism and all the stuff, and then starting to learn about the Inquisitions, and then scratching the surface and understanding about the witch burnings, and understanding what that really was about was the erasure of women in positions of leadership pre-Christianity. So prior to coming into Buddhism, I actually was looking at the pre-Christian pagan and Wiccan traditions, and have always held on to some of that along the way. I guess what had me not stick with them fully is my simple understanding at the time of worship. It didn't make sense to worship the elements, but I understand now, full circle and back again, that it isn't about worshiping the elements. It's about understanding the as above, so below, that we are all, part of the universe, and the larger cycles of the universe play out in the cycles of womanhood. So hence for me, one of the biggest key differences of not being Muslim is the following of the moon cycles. For me, the moon cycles are very much tied to the divine feminine, rather than an Islamic calendar that is talking about men's history. So that's an interesting one for me, that I feel closer to divine source following moon cycles that are reflecting of the divine feminine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow, fascinating.
And that my Buddhist practice is, she is called Vajrayogini, and I'm a Tibetan Buddhist Vajrayana practitioner, a form of tantric practitioner, but not in the way that is out there. It's tantric in the sense that you are taking the symbols of, again, using the term deities and things, but they're not deities. They are expressions of universal energy in form that we can understand, in a way more than when you just say formless. We still require, to some degree, most of us at least, something to visualize. So the deities are abilities to visualize, and when you understand the meaning of this and the symbolism of why they look the way they look and what they're holding and what they're doing, it's all part of the practice. And Vajrayogini is the only Buddhist divine feminine deity that stands alone. She is not a consort. She is not in union with a male. So again, profoundly significant for me.
Mhm. Now, you mentioned also that you've been married twice, right?
Yes.
So,
I can't blame the second one on naivety like I could the first one.
so the first, let me get this straight. The first one was in Australia and the second one in Pakistan, or vice versa?
Yeah. No. First one in Australia and second
Okay.
one in Pakistan. So I married an Australian, Anglo-Australian man. He was older than me, like 9 years older than me. That was in my early 20s. What's really interesting is Oh, yes. What's really interesting is that he was into he was a musician, and he was also, well, now what I understand is a kind of wannabe shaman. He would do rune readings and tarot readings, and um, claim to be spiritual and that kind of thing. And so when I investigated the path and became Buddhist and was looking at other spiritual paths, he told me that I didn't have what it takes to go
Oh
on
wow.
a spiritual path. And what's really interesting is that he said that in my 20s. And the second husband, because my second husband, he was Shia, and I fully understand and appreciate that path because of the family of the Prophet and Zainab. Sayyida Zainab for me was, again, a righteous woman standing up against injustice and patriarchy. Loved her. But yeah, when I said that I wanted to go on the Sufi path and come back into an esoteric practice, he also said that I didn't have it,
Oh wow.
whatever that it was. And interestingly, neither of those men were disciplined in spiritually or like they were not disciplined over their emotions. I can tell you that right now, or their thinking. So it was quite
Interesting.
interesting to have these two men tell me that the esoteric, deep spiritual path was something that I couldn't go on. But anyway, I did, because that's me and I do what I do.
Wow.
I don't, it might take me a while to learn, but I in the end always follow my own guidance, and I don't listen to what
That's what
guys
matters, because we have
yeah,
all the
we do.
insights, the guidance within us.
We do. And I see now, and this is for me is what I'm so focused on, to hopefully and it's not just women in their 40s, it's 40 and up, 40 and over. But I did find 40, because we have such a youth obsessed society, one could almost say 30 and up, but 40 and up, because we're entering perimenopause and menopause and all that kind of thing. But we are also realizing that, yeah, we have a very youth obsessed society. So I feel that 40 is quite a significant watershed time for a lot of women, because we're made to feel like we're suddenly leaving the decades of youth, and we must be scared and dread it and do everything to ward off any signs of aging, and that kind of thing. So I'm here to counter that and to hopefully prevent other women from making some disastrous decisions out of fear of missing out or
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
So, and then after this chapter in Pakistan, you came back to Australia,
I
and
did.
then you transitioned from Islam into spirituality.
Yeah, but I did. It took a couple of years.
Mhm.
Initially, when I came back to Australia in 2016, my first uh, my first coaching business that I was getting off the ground, I was very focused on helping particularly convert Muslim women um, maintain their faith in the face of abuse. Because one of the things that I sadly, again,
Mhm.
realized is that the teachings of Islam do not promote patriarchy, misogyny, and abuse. Far from it. But
Absolutely.
unfortunately, the cultural contexts where Islam is planted um, are more like the Arab cultures of the time of the Prophet that he came to overturn.
That's
So
the
it's
tradition.
like
Yeah.
they've all gone back to that time, the
Mhm.
mistreatment of women. And yeah, it's a battle that I was very political about and very activist about. but something just clicked in me where I realized it's because I never really fit. I mean, you don't, as a convert, it's very hard. Even the only way really for a convert to maybe kind of belong in the cultural groups, the ethnic groups of practitioners is through marriage. And even then, you're really not fully in. And so being the single woman wearing hijab and that here, it was a fight that it no longer felt like it was my fight anymore, and not something that I wanted to pursue. And in the meantime, also, I never left Buddhism. Like the pressure was there to. That's another. There's often a pressure that you're kind of told, well, you've converted, or some would say, and some use the term a revert, as if to say everything you did beforehand was no good and now you've come back to Islam. I always argued against that term because I never felt that the path I was on was wrong to begin with. It's just part of the ongoing journey. So I never actually let go of my Buddhism. It's not like I turned my back on it and said it was not a part of me. Vajrayogini was always with me. And so I'd returned back home. I was practicing Sufism with a tariqa here in Australia. I had my Sufi manual in one hand and my Buddhist manual in the other hand, and my heart was with Vajrayogini. I saw the relative benefit of both, and they are both traditions and that take you on a purification of the heart. And it's really just a matter of the worldview and the way of the practice of the Vajrayogini just resonated with me, and it had more meaning to me than the Islamic practice, the Sufi practice. That's simple as that, really.
Powerful.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were working when you came back in Australia with women, mainly Muslim women, were abused.
Yes. So that business was called Manifesting Muslima. And the idea for me of that was that, no different to the frightening numbers of abuse of women in non-Muslim communities, which is frightening. Australia has one of the highest domestic violence statistics in the world. There's a woman murdered every week by her intimate partner. And that's what's reported. We all know that what's not reported is in far greater numbers. So yeah, we have a big problem here. But I guess the issue then, so the fact that it's happening in Muslim communities is not strange or anything. It's saddening though, because I do really feel that the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, and what is very clearly, I mean, there's often misread by Westerners as a critique of Islam, but the ayat or in the Quran pertaining to how to de-escalate violence in the family, and the misinterpretation of what they call the word strike. It's not that. But what it's actually asking for the men of the household to do is to refrain from acting in anger, because men are told to treat women and children and animals and the environment as caretakers of all that. They are told to treat it with respect and dignity and honor and kindness, all the rest of it. And unfortunately, I do feel that by the most part, that isn't happening. And
Why
so
is
the
that?
biggest problem, why not? Because the same patriarchy and misogyny of pre-Arabian culture that the Prophet Muhammad came to overturn is the same patriarchy and misogyny throughout the world that is divided and conquered and caused wars and violence and death and famine and rape and murder and all the rest of it. You know, the Prophet died and men took over again. You know, the jockeying of power after the Prophet died to decide who was going to run. I mean, you know, when you look at Islamic history, after the Prophet died and who took over and how they took over and all the rest of it, and some of that kind of, you understand that it all kind of went back to business as usual, patriarchy, misogyny. And so a lot of the cultures where Islam resides are not practicing the spirit of the religion or the.
I agree. It's more based on tradition and culture than actual religion.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and the hard thing then as a Muslim woman, let alone a Muslim woman of color, is to speak up and be allowed to speak up. And then you're kind of double-edged sword. If you do speak up and say, I'm being mistreated and abused, then those who are Islamophobic will say, well, that's the religion. So then you keep quiet because you don't want to tarnish and feed into that. But and then you end up losing your own path and your own solace in the religion and in the spiritual practice. So for me at the time, that felt both it was born out of activism, really. So yeah, but as I left the religion, for me, I left the religion and removed. For me, it's Essential Awakening Mentoring is my new business, and where I am at with that is awakening to your own essence. We are all energy beings. We are all equipped with a universal wisdom essence. And if you want to overlay that with an architecture of a religious tradition or spiritual practice, go ahead, you can, but one is not more correct than the other. But I'm speaking to the wisdom that doesn't require you to label it in any particular way.
Wow.
And so I still have a lot of Muslim sisters following me.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Do you still keep
yeah.
do you still keep ties in that community? You still do work, consulting, or anything with them?
Largely online now. I think that was the other thing for me. Where I physically live in Australia, there is not the suburbs that I live and where I grew up and where I hang out, and not where the Muslims hang out. They're different.
Do you think you would be able to do and have the same impact that you're having now in Australia if you had stayed in Pakistan?
No, I think if I'd stayed in Pakistan, I'd be dead.
Oh yes, I agree.
I'd be dead, like literally dead, because I was really, he would have either killed me or
family or the religious people around. Yes.
No,
yes.
well, I was very, I think, I mean, because there's violence, he was violent. So I think that I would either not be here because of that. But I also got very sick, just probably from the stress and the anxiety, but I think also just the not acclimatizing to the microbes or whatever. And so progressively my digestive system just imploded, and I wasn't holding down any food. Even water was becoming difficult. So a great way to lose a lot of weight.
Sure. Now, question now. How difficult and challenging was the divorce process? Did you divorce him while in Pakistan or what while you were in Australia? You
Oh no,
told him,
no. I came back to Australia.
of course,
For
because
me,
I don't think it would have left you leave and it would have ended very badly.
for me, it was surprisingly easy. I think what was I feel very blessed in the sense that, as I said, I was really, really sick by the time I left. And they could see that I was fading. So something was, I wouldn't have made it out there alive, I don't believe, had I not left when I did. So they enabled me to leave. I packed up all my belongings. It was on the proviso, yes, I'm returning to Australia on my own initially, because he didn't have a passport or anything like that, and that he would eventually come. I landed in December of 2016. By April of 2017, I met with Mulana here in Sydney, and simply just told him what had happened. He kind of clearly he knew that this was happening quite enough that it wasn't just me, because he just went, he kind of rolled his eyes and slightly not chuckled, but you know what I mean, like, oh, God, and I literally just he wrote some letter and sent it via email, and he just took care of everything, and gave me a certificate and said that I was divorced. So
how did your ex-husband?
So I did that religious. What's that?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, so I did that religious. So that was the cheap and easy, quick way in April. However, I was concerned about the legal side of things, because I didn't want to have a situation blow up at me later. So I did, in fact, set about through the Australian courts. So being an Australian citizen, marrying a foreign national meant that I was able to legally divorce him from Australia, and that's a no-fault divorce kind of thing. It doesn't require
so the legal system in Australia did not require his approval or his signature or anything?
I had to serve him. So it was an expensive legal process in the end.
Imagine. Wow.
Thousands of dollars to do that, but thanks, Dad. Dad helped me out on that one. And of course, no property settlement or anything like that. But
good.
He got served in Pakistan, and then just everything a year later.
How did he react when you told him?
I don't know. No idea. I had him blocked everywhere, so there was.
Oh, so you were not in contact with him, and you didn't notify him? Oh, okay.
No contact. By that stage, absolutely no contact, because he was, he was. Oh gosh, that is my battery deciding to go. What I'm going to do.
Wow, what a fascinating conversation. As I just told you, this is the 182nd episode, and this ranks right up among the top 5 most fascinating, captivating conversations. And this is not a compliment. This is an observation. So, wow, we can do an entire 2-3 episodes on that, but let's move forward now.
Yes.
Let me take you into another type of traveling down memory line. Go back to when you're a young girl growing up. When we're kids, people around us, family, teachers, relatives always ask us, so Pia, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer as a young girl back then?
I think the very first answer was an archaeologist.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And then early tween years would have been that and a journalist. So yeah.
Lovely.
But archaeologist absolutely was, and it still is. I love antiquity and culture and discovery.
So did
Yeah,
you partake
absolutely.
into any of that while you were in Pakistan?
Well, not
As
the
an amateur, of
archaeological
course,
dig.
just going
No,
around and
no, but oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's why I'm yearning to live anywhere in the world other than Australia, where there's an opportunity to be
oh, you might be
living.
surprised. There's quite a lot of, historical artifacts in Australia from the way, way long before.
First Nations, yes, but because of the nature of the First Nation and where they're located, then they are not. You're not living among them, and in fact, rightly so, may not be able to see all of them because of the cultural permissions around it. But
Okay.
no, we don't really have. It's not like living in Rome or Florence where you're
Oh yeah. Right
surrounded
on your
by
face. Yeah.
antiquity. No, gosh, no.
Yes.
They pretty
All right.
much knocked down.
So now let's stay to when you were growing up as a kid. What was your
Yep.
relationship with school? Did you love or hate school?
Always loved learning and reading. But no, I feel I struggled at school. I was a daydreamer. I didn't fit in to socially awkward. I didn't fit in to the groups and the group politic, whatever was going on, because I was a daydreamer. I couldn't sort of buckle down, as they would say, to sort of the way that learning was presented. That being said, once I left school and entered university, I've done, I don't know, 4 university degrees. I've continued a
Wow.
life of learning. I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly learning. I mean, it's just my whole life has been about
Mhm.
learning, spiritually and intellectually. So, yeah, but I think the school system, I did not fit into it at all, really.
Me
Yeah.
neither. Yes, I am with you on that. Now, what was your very first job?
Ah, gosh, what was it? Well, I guess as a teenager, babysitting, so child minding, in those days. Then I was working. I was working in my dad's business for a while, and I used to work in a florist. I used to work in a pharmacy, just little jobs over the years. And I was working in the disability field, and this was when I was 28. I was working in the disability field as a working with arts and crafts with young adults with disabilities. And I was run over coming home from work at
Oh
100
no.
kilometers an hour, and I sustained a traumatic brain injury, and I was in a coma for a month or so, and
Wow.
awoke from that coma. Had 4 years later, they realized that I had epilepsy, petit mal epilepsy, absent seizures. So really 28 through to my 30s was spent leaving abusive marriage number 1, so trying to deal with that, and trying to, which that marriage, I had not told my family that I had actually kicked him out 3 weeks before that head injury happened.
Wow.
And he came back. They didn't know, and I'm in a coma, and my memory was not there. and I was having to relearn how to learn, and I sustained huge impact in my life. So it really did take all of my 30s to overcome. I did manage to go back to uni to partly as the brain recovery, to go back and do a degree that I'd already done, so that I could relearn how to learn. Yeah, so really I was not working at all in my 30s. I was recovering from a brain injury. So my first full-time job post head injury was in 2018, and I was working. So I come, because when I was in Pakistan working, I wasn't working full-time.
Okay.
When I and when I came back in 2016, I was also very sick. So it was 2018 that I got my first salaried full-time job and moved back out to my own apartment that I'm in now. And yeah, so, and that was working in the health insurance field, funnily enough.
All right.
Since then, that job ended just as COVID was beginning, and I do some freelancing now in digital media, but I've started my business, so I'm mainly now focused on getting my coaching business off the ground. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, let's move forward. There's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what you tell yourself all day long. So when you had to change your story at your lowest, how did you change it? How did you do that? Did you do it through the help of friends, family, mentors, books? Tell us a process you used to change your story, to change your life.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, I will nuance that saying a little bit more. It's not about changing what you're thinking, or even why you're thinking what you're thinking, because the answer isn't found. So I when we get caught up in what the story is and trying to change the content of our thinking, we stay in our head. We're just adding more layers of thinking on top of thinking, and the transformation doesn't happen there. The transformation is when we release the importance of the thinking and tap into our inner wisdom in the present moment and be guided by that. So for me, the transformation happened there. And the realization of where the transformation happens, that came, I was very fortunate to stumble upon the 3 Principles Paradigm by Sydney Banks, reading one of his books called Second Chances. And then upon reading that, I went and did a 2-year program studying to practice and coach in the 3 principles. And that I'm continuing always to increase my professional development and training in that way of seeing the world and the truth of our human experience. So it's not about, it's not about trying to change the story, but simply acknowledge that it is just story, and leaving it there is where I'm at these days.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, 1 sec.